All right, welcome in everyone. Ready for a deep dive today? We're tackling something that I think is super relevant, especially with, the pace of life these days. We're talking all things mental health, and more specifically, how we can all get a little bit better at handling stress.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, it really is about more than just like surviving, right? It's about actually feeling good and thriving.
Absolutely. And that's kind of what we want to dig into today. I mean, how do we move beyond just the basics? I was really fascinated by some of the research you sent over. It's like, why does actually putting effort into our mental health make such a difference? Like, how does it actually play out day to day?
Well, one of the coolest things, and this came up in one of your sources, is how much it can boost your focus. When you're actually taking care of your mental well-being, you're just so much more productive.
That makes sense.
It's like, if you think of your brain like a computer, right? The less mental clutter you have, the more processing power you've got for everything else. Mm-hmm. Actually, there's research that shows a link between lower stress levels and a more active prefrontal cortex. That's the part of your brain that handles all the executive function stuff.
Oh, wow. So it's like a real physical change in how your brain's working.
Exactly. And it's not just about getting stuff done, right? It spills over into your relationships too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, when you're feeling better mentally, you're just more present with the people you care about. There was a study you shared that showed people who prioritize their mental health often have stronger relationships. You're more in control of your emotions, so you can actually be more empathetic, and you're just better equipped to handle all the, the normal ups and downs that come with any relationship.
Right. That resonates so much. It's like you have more capacity for those around you. And, speaking of capacity, what about sleep? Like, that's something so many people struggle with. How does that tie into mental well-being?
Yeah, I mean, sleep and mental health are so connected. Like, when you're stressed out, it's so hard to get a good night's sleep. And then when you don't sleep well, you're just more on edge.
Yeah.
It's this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But the flip side is also true. One of the studies you sent looked at this, and it showed that managing your stress and calming your mind can actually lead to much better sleep. And of course, good sleep then makes you more resilient and clear-headed during the day. So it becomes this positive cycle instead.
Oh, I like that. A positive cycle.
Yeah, it's like a virtuous cycle. Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about focus, relationships, and sleep. What about some of the bigger long-term benefits of making mental health a priority? Like, what does that do for us down the road?
So one of the most important things, and this came up in a few of the articles you shared, is that it can actually lower your risk of anxiety and depression. It's kind of like building up your mental defenses. You're giving yourself the tools to handle whatever life throws at you without getting totally overwhelmed.
Oh, that's so important.
It's not just about feeling good right now. It's about protecting your future self.
I love that. It's like an investment in your future well-being. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about all the positives, but what about the other side of that? What happens if we just keep ignoring our mental health? What are the potential consequences of not taking care of ourselves?
Well, unfortunately, it can be pretty serious. One thing that can happen is burnout. You just reach this point where you're emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausted. You just feel drained all the time.
Oh, yeah. That's a feeling I think a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah, and then on top of that, you can develop chronic stress, which, as we know, can mess with both your mind and body.
And you're right, it's not just mental. There are physical consequences too, right? I remember one of the articles talked about how stress can impact your physical health.
Absolutely. When you're stressed, your body pumps out all these hormones, especially cortisol, which can raise your blood pressure and weaken your immune system.
Oh, wow.
So you're actually more likely to get sick. It really shows how connected our minds and bodies are.
Okay, so let's talk about stress specifically. What is it really? And at what point does it go from being a normal part of life to something that's actually harmful?
So at its core, stress is just your body's way of reacting to challenges. It's like a built-in alarm system.
Okay.
And a little bit of stress can actually be a good thing, it can help you focus, get things done, and even perform better under pressure.
So it's not always bad.
Not at all. Some of your sources actually mention this. It's imagine your body has this gas pedal, right? A little bit of pressure on that gas pedal can help you move forward.
Oh, I like that.
It's only when you keep your foot on the gas all the time that it starts to cause problems.
Mm-hmm.
That's when stress becomes chronic, and that's when it can really start to damage your system.
That's a great analogy. So how do we know when our stress levels are getting too high? What are some warning signs that we should be paying attention to?
Well, there are a bunch of things to watch out for. One common one is feeling constantly tired, even if you're getting enough sleep, or having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep.
Yeah, I definitely know that feeling.
Right. You might also find it hard to concentrate or feel kind of mentally foggy.
Ugh, yeah, like you just can't focus.
Exactly. And emotionally, you might be more irritable or just generally on edge. Little things might start to bug you more easily.
Right.
You might feel anxious more often or feel overwhelmed by like normal everyday tasks.
Yeah, I can see how those would be red flags.
And physically, you might get more headaches or your muscles might feel tense for no reason. Some people even have digestive problems when they're stressed.
Wow, it really can manifest in so many different ways.
And sometimes people try to cope with stress in unhealthy ways, like by emotional eating or other things that aren't so good for them.
So it sounds like the key is to be aware of these signs, to recognize the patterns and not just dismiss them as like a bad day.
Yeah, exactly. If you can catch these signs early, you can start doing things to manage your stress before it gets out of control.
Okay, so there's a lot of information out there about mental health and stress, and some of it can be kind of confusing. I think it would be helpful to clear up some of the common myths that people believe. Like, what's one big myth you hear about stress?
One that I hear a lot, and I bet you have too, is that all stress is bad.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And we touched on this a little bit earlier, but it seems like that's not entirely true, right? Like, there's a difference between, the stress of giving a presentation and the stress of being in a constant state of worry.
Exactly. Like we talked about, a little bit of stress can actually help you perform better. It's just when it's constant, when it becomes chronic stress, that it's a problem. Most of the sources you shared emphasize this distinction.
Okay, that's helpful. So it's about finding that balance, understanding the difference between good stress and bad stress. Here's another myth I hear a lot, that only weak people struggle with mental health. Like, if you're strong enough, you should be able to just power through it.
That's such a harmful myth. The truth is, mental health challenges can affect anyone. It doesn't matter how strong or resilient you are.
Right.
It could be genetics, it could be past experiences, it could be things happening in your life right now. It's not a sign of weakness. It's just part of being human.
Exactly. We all have mental health, just like we all have physical health.
Right.
Okay, one last myth I want to address. A lot of people think that if they just ignore their stress, it'll eventually go away on its own. Like, if they just push it down and pretend it's not there, it'll magically disappear.
Yeah, I wish it worked that way, but unfortunately it doesn't. In fact, ignoring your stress usually makes it worse. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Yeah.
You could do it for a little while, but eventually it's going to pop back up, probably with even more force.
Right. So what's the alternative? Like, what do we do instead of ignoring it?
You got to deal with it head on, but in a healthy way, of course. That's where coping mechanisms come in.
That makes sense. So we've talked about why mental health is so important. We've defined stress, we've busted some myths, and now let's get to the practical stuff. Like, what are some actual things people can do to manage their stress?
Well, there are a ton of great techniques out there. One that you might have come across in your research is mindfulness.
Oh yeah, mindfulness. I've heard of that. But what is it exactly?
Basically, it's about paying attention to the present moment without judgment. A lot of times, it involves focusing on your breath.
Okay.
Even just a few minutes of mindfulness can help calm your mind and body. Like, it kind of slows down that stress response.
That sounds pretty doable. What else can people try?
Exercise is another huge one. When you move your body, you release all this tension. Plus, you get those endorphins, which make you feel good.
Yeah, exercise is like a natural mood booster.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be anything crazy, a brisk walk, some yoga, whatever gets you moving. The key is to do it regularly. Like, even a little bit each day can make a difference.
Right. Consistency is key.
Now, another thing that can be really helpful is journaling.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people find it helpful to write down their thoughts and feelings. It can help you process things, gain perspective, and even just vent.
I can see how that would be therapeutic.
It's like having a conversation with yourself on paper. You can get all those worries and stresses out of your head and onto the page.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got mindfulness, exercise, and journaling. What about when people feel overwhelmed by, like, all the things they have to do?
Time management is crucial for that. Learning to prioritize, set boundaries, and break down big tasks into smaller chunks can make a huge difference.
Yeah, that feeling of being overwhelmed can be so paralyzing.
It really can. And sometimes saying no is the most important thing you can do for your mental health.
Yeah, learning to set boundaries is so important.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't forget about the power of social connection.
Yeah, talking to people you trust, whether it's friends, family, or a therapist, can be so helpful. They can listen, offer support, and remind you that you're not alone.
It's true. Sometimes just having someone to talk to can make all the difference.
And last but not least, we got to talk about sleep again.
Oh yeah, sleep is so important.
It really is. When you're well rested, you're just better equipped to handle stress. So make sure you're getting enough sleep and try to create a relaxing bedtime routine.
Great tips. Okay, so we've got all these individual techniques, but how do we actually put them into practice? Like, how do we build a mental health routine that we can actually stick with?
The key is to start small and be consistent. Like, just pick one or two things that resonate with you and try to incorporate them into your daily life.
Okay, that sounds manageable.
Yeah, and don't try to do everything at once. It's much better to build sustainable habits over time.
So what would be a good starting point?
Maybe try setting aside just 10 minutes each day for something relaxing. It could be mindfulness, reading, taking a bath, whatever helps you unwind.
Yeah, even just 10 minutes can make a difference.
It really can. And another thing you can try is practicing gratitude. Like, taking a few minutes each day to think about the things you're grateful for can really shift your mindset.
That's a great idea. And I know a lot of people are trying to be more mindful of their screen time these days. How does that fit into the picture?
Social media and all the constant notifications can be really stressful. So taking breaks from your phone and computer can be super beneficial.
That makes sense. It's like giving your brain a break from all the stimulation.
Exactly. And finally, make time for things you enjoy, things that bring you joy and make you feel alive. Whether it's hobbies, spending time in nature, or whatever lights you up.
It's so important to have those things in your life.
Absolutely. It's all about finding that balance between taking care of your responsibilities and nurturing your soul.
You know, it really strikes me that taking care of our mental health is just as important as taking care of our physical health. And when we do both, it creates this incredible ripple effect in our lives.
It's so true. It's not about being happy all the time, but about having the tools to navigate the ups and downs of life with more resilience and grace.
Absolutely. So, listeners, we've covered a lot of ground today. We've talked about the importance of mental health, the nature of stress, busted some myths, and explored a bunch of practical strategies for managing stress and building a sustainable mental health routine.
And the main message we want you to take away is that stress is a normal part of life, but it doesn't have to control you.
Right.
By being aware of your stressors, using healthy coping mechanisms, and making your mental well-being a priority, you can live a more balanced, fulfilling, and resilient life.
And to leave you with something to think about, I'd love for you to consider this. Of all the techniques we've discussed today, what's one small change you could make this week to prioritize your mental health?
It could be anything. Starting a mindfulness practice, going for a walk each day, journaling for 5 minutes before bed. Whatever feels doable for you.
Exactly. Remember, small steps can lead to big changes over time.
And progress, not perfection, is the goal.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive today. We hope you found it helpful. Until next time, take care of yourselves.